Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back, wonderful people. Today I wanted to talk about consciousness. The question of consciousness is, the biggest or one of the biggest conundrum in things in science, right? Scientists refer to the question of consciousness as the hard problem, which is pretty hilarious, and it really illustrates how difficult they find it. So, what I would like to propose is that the main difficulty, I'm go right out and say it, the main difficulty that science, Western science in particular, has with understanding consciousness is that they are stuck in a very old, materialistic, dogmatic paradigm. Like they really, really believe that matter is reality, is fundamental to reality. That matter somehow precedes consciousness. Like they think that if there weren't all these solid things and these flesh and blood bodies, that consciousness would just not even exist. That the universe as it is not conscious. Like it's not as if there were like this energy out there first, and then that energy produced matter, and that some kind of intelligent feedback loop was interacting with the energy in order to form the structures that form the particles that form the molecules, to organize those complex structures. No consciousness there, no intelligence, no feedback, no sense of awareness for the universe to somehow make little adjustments in its creation until it got it just right enough to produce life. No. All that just happened. It was already there. It was like there was this time where before the Big Bang, and what was there? Stuff, just a little bit of stuff. And then it just very rapidly expanded like an explosion. Bam! Big bam! Big bang! Whatever. And to me, I don't know if to me that sounds like complete nonsense. Like there had to be consciousness first. There had to be energy first. Energy and fields of quantum concentrated regions within the quantum fields that form these particles. We know that now. We know that particles are not like solid billiard balls. They are regions of concentrated tension and like force. There's like a concentrated region where within a field, a quantum field, and that is what we perceive as a particle. And depending on how we're looking at it and who's looking at it, it actually changes around. So there's something called the observer effect, in which when I direct my consciousness towards a bunch of little subatomic particles, they are responding to it. They move. It changes. It literally changes the readings and the measurements of the location, the speed, and other properties of the particles, right? So just by looking, that tells me a lot. That tells me that there's something happening, that my mind is projecting a frequency it's broadcasting a frequency into the quantum field that's producing an effect. Otherwise, how would it produce an effect? The matter is not projecting at, there's, particles of light that bounce off and on things. And I would say that light and energy, the charge of light, is part of what consciousness is, but that's a little more complex. But basically, this whole thing, this story of science and being so enamored with matter and needing to fight for the fundamental primacy of matter, is that it started with this massive insecurity complex, right? I'm saying it. Science, Western science, has a massive insecurity concept because of the environment in which he was born, right? So there were these kings and they had all the power, and then these religious figures came about and they had all the power, and they were telling everybody what to believe, and everybody just believed whatever the pope or the bishop, was saying. There was like all these religious figures, and they took advantage of that, and there were a lot of bad consequences, and there was no real medicine that was really, really curing things. So scientists, in order to, as they're developing their practice, in order to take back their power, first of all, the first scientists were extremely religious, like Newtonian physics, right? This guy Newton, he was a religious, almost like a fanatic, He references God's mystery and God's in a lot of his findings and writings. Anyway, ironically enough, the more science gets into, gets a little bit of power, makes a little bit of headway, they have two reasons for wanting to dismiss anything related to energy as being fundamental. For one, energy sounds like spirit, and it sounds a lot like the Holy Spirit and God, and non-visible forces were considered, spiritual, divine, angelic, whatever you want to call it. The second one is that they needed to be able to be extremely rational, and they needed to be able to, and they still do, need to be able to, and this is, for good cause, to be able to verify things, right? They need to be able to measure it and have it like, it's not this much, it's just this much, exactly this much to make this whole thing work. And they need to be able to verify and repeat the same result over and over again. So when it comes to invisible stuff and forces, they don't want to deal with that. They literally just took it out of the equation because they were incapable of verifying what these invisible forces, such as electromagnetism and other fields, could do or be, right? So they're like, you know what? If it's not physical, let's not even worry about it. Like, maybe there is a God, but we can't measure it, and maybe there is such things as energy and emotions, but we'll call emotions like some other kind of science. Let's call that soft science, because it's not hard like the stuff. We have the hard stuff, and that's what's real. And so eventually they decided that what is real is what is literally what's hard is what's real. What's physical, matter, is what's real. And everything else just kind of comes out of that. Nonsense, right? I mean, there's no way matter comes before energy. There's just no way. Okay, so what I think about consciousness. First of all, even before the Big Bang, there was consciousness. Before there was matter, that's that little bit of stuff that they say that, there was just like, how do they explain the Big Bang? Well, there was just some stuff there. It just already was there. Well, what was there before that? Oh, we don't know. All we know is that there was a little bit of stuff, and it's tiny little bit, about a football size of stuff, of little tiny particles, and then it exploded. So I would say that will and consciousness, wanted to perceive itself, and it created this stuff. It coalesced. It concentrated itself into form, into little tiny structures. And what caused the Big Bang, as people will know, it wasn't a collision. There wasn't like two different things that like boom exploded. They don't know what it was, but I would say that it was, like the word, the logos, the first vibration, the Om. It was almost like a thought gave birth to the universe, and that's very abstract, I know, but I'm just saying that there had to be something to cause that. It couldn't just be, a couple of particles deciding, hey, I'm going to go this way, you go that way, and then we'll expand that way, like, right? Because particles are not conscious, but they are conscious. So what I'm proposing, and as far as science, there's only two dudes talking about this besides Deepak Chopra, who nobody in the scientific community takes seriously for some reason. But there's a guy who people take very seriously. His name is Roger Penrose, Sir Roger Penrose, who was a quantum physicist and a mathematical physicist that worked with Stephen Hawking, and he developed a lot of the theories and understandings that we have regarding black holes, and also tiling and twister effects, all this stuff. Anyway, between him and Stuart Hameroff, they developed a theory called OR theory of consciousness, orchestrated objective reduction. So this refers to a quantum effect in which there are many possibilities happening at all times, because like I said before, the particles are not billiard balls, tiny. They're actually concentrated regions, and they exist in many places at once. And it's only when the conscious observer looks at it that they reduce, the many possibilities reduce into one objective reality. So they propose that there's a mechanism in the brain that's processing this through like very advanced computing, and they basically determine that the part of the brain that's doing this is the microtubules, which are inside the neurons. And inside the microtubules, there's a little tiny bit of water. And this water vibrates at like the level of gigahertz. So based on that's the closest thing. They're saying that these gigahertz, this water, which vibrates at the level of gigahertz, is picking up a vibratory resonance from space-time continuum, like the actual fabric of space-time. It's picking up consciousness. There's something that they call it proto-consciousness. Proto-consciousness means consciousness that's undefined, unconditioned. It's non-subjective. It's not a personal, like, here's my mind and there's your mind. No, it's just consciousness, which is, they say, that consciousness is in the fabric of space-time. And that's exactly what I believe. I believe that consciousness is the feedback, awareness that is guiding the formation of particles into molecules, into eventually cells, living cells. So living cells and everything's alive. Everything is constantly vibrating and in motion and has behaviors, patterns, even just particles. I'm not talking about ants and plants. Those are definitely alive. Those are made up of cells that are alive. So each cell itself is alive. It has a little life of its own. It has things that it goes away from and things that it goes towards. It has a self-awareness. So it literally will fight for its own survival. So, but not at the expense of the collective good. It'll sacrifice itself for the collective good. But if it's not in conflict with the whole collective good, meaning the rest of the body, it'll try to survive. Anyhow, what I was saying is that consciousness is literally embedded in the space-time fabric. Like the geometry of space-time fabric is resonating. Like when they go into outer space, empty space, they still can measure, you guys love to measure, you can measure a resonance, like a sound. And this sound repeats itself every 3 orders of magnitude, increases, and it becomes bigger wavelengths, to the point that it's like, it starts out at a very, very high frequency, something beyond gigahertz, but then eventually it increases the length into the level of gigahertz. And so that's how they propose. So the microtubules, the water within the microtubules in the brain can pick up these gigahertz. And the way that I've always thought of it is that, when you look at a TV set, it's not the TV that you're really looking at. The TV is just a box. What you're looking at is the signal. There's a signal that the TV is picking up, and it's producing an image on the screen. And just like that, our brains are picking up this signal. It's like a Wi-Fi signal. So our brains are a transceiver that picks up the signal and then broadcasts it. And in broadcasting it, we're shaping the quantum elements. All right, I ran out of time.